When we talk about practice, we're talking about practice of two things classically. One is what we call discrimination or discernment, and the other one is detachment. And one follows from the other. But the whole question of discrimination in terms of decision making and what is the best decision is not exactly what we mean by viveka. But we do have a faculty that is able to evaluate and decide, there's no doubt. And that faculty, we have to understand from the start, is a reflection of our inner light. That is, consciousness itself is reflected in the faculty of the intellect. It looks like the intellect is an independent entity, but it's not. It's just a reflection. So it's a tool like anything else. And naturally, being a tool, we can use it. And it's best to use it in the best possible way for everyone's benefit, including our own. And every decision, just practically speaking, will require information. So the process of decision making is, A, let me get the information first, let me weigh up the options, let me decide what is the best option, and let me implement it. So it goes from potential to kinetic. So when you have to make a very rapid decision, is that still the process? Do we have time for the process? Well, we still have to go through that process to make an informed decision, even if it's a split decision. And sometimes we don't have the correct information to make the right decision, in which case we have to ask for more information on it, you know. And I don't think there's any circumstance where things are slowed down, things are so quick that we cannot actually get additional information about something and go through a process, even if it's a very quick one. So for example, if you're asked to give in a crisis situation a decision about something, you'd still go through that process because you do it very quickly. And there's no point in making a decision if you only have half the information. So that's just on a practical level. But then the question arises, well, having weighed up all options, which is the best for all round, for everything, for the whole total situation? And that there we have to resort to the other kind of discrimination, which is spiritual discrimination. What does that mean? It means that we have to continuously evaluate what is good and what is not good, what is best for me and what is not. And we have to be bold enough to say, yeah, this is not good for me. Let's take, for example, a social situation where there seems to be some kind of pressure to engage in some harmful social activity. We may not think it's harmful at the time, but let us say, for example, take a drink of alcohol or something, in the morning regret it because the whole body will suffer from it, etc. Then clearly that's a bad decision. It's not the end of the world, though, because it gives us the opportunity to say, well, I'm suffering from this. I won't do it again. So that's okay. But really, in a philosophical sense, we have to evaluate really what is real and what is unreal. And this is the primary method of the Jnana Yogi. We have to decide that this world, there's the phrase, in the real world. And what we mean really is in the dream world. Because what we see as our world is really just a dream world. And it's not going to last for long. And the great, great Upanishad that really systematically deals with this would be the Mandukya Upanishad. 12 small stanzas. And it tells us that what we deem and what we give a stamp to our reality as is actually really just a kind of dream world which we relate to so much that we think it is our only reality, and we dismiss dream and we dismiss every other state of consciousness. The Mandukya Upanishad tells us very clearly that the so-called ordinary world. And I think there's a Wolfgang Smith, who was a great physicist and also philosopher, and spent some time in India and valued Vedanta as well as Christianity. But he calls this experience of ours the corporeal world, because it's a mix really of an intangible mind plus the physical. And then when we take the physical away, well, we still have this mind which acts in a dream. And when we take that away, we somehow retreat, as it were, into an amorphous area. And we have no recollection of it because there's no memory within it. The whole faculty of the mind, normally speaking, is gone, except that area where we are close to the reality, an area of potentiality. Of course, what happens here on the microcosm happens on the macrocosm. And so the whole universe goes into that state of deep, deep unconscious sleep and reemerges again after eons and eons of time. The whole thing is replayed. So, is it easy to make a discernment like that? Well, for the jnana yogis, that's their primary discipline. But what about the bhakti yogi? How can he make a discernment? He doesn't make that kind of discernment. What he does is he sees the divine in everything and in everyone. And by virtue of that, that becomes more the reality than anything else. Seeing the self in all and all beings in the self is a very primary thing contained in so many Upanishads. Ishu Upanishad, Katu Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita is all saying the same thing. See the self in all beings and all beings in self. And Sri Krishna personalizes it and says, see me. In other words, it's a way of us seeing the divine. We had a very interesting conference yesterday on peace. And part of that was a discussion with somebody who is a specialist in mediation. Mediation in terms of people who have conflict. And so I was saying, all right, and I was telling them about these various layers within the human personality, that actually we seem to be coming as a unit, but there are areas within it that are clearly not part of us at a fundamental level. The body is not part of us at the fundamental level, but the fundamental level, the divine within, the God within, the supreme within, the real authentic self within, is being reflected so that without that, speech doesn't happen. Without that, the eyes don't see. The fact that you see somebody and you know they're alive is because the eyes are sparkling with life. And the author of that life is the presence of this divine within. Now, how do you bring that into a mediation process? You evaluate the suffering that a person is enduring, because all conflicts involve suffering. And managing the reaction to conflict is called anger management or conflict management or conflict resolutions. All of these kinds of words are there. And they're part and parcel, it seems, of modern business life, because people come into conflict with each other. And because people come into conflict with each other, it's because we're not evaluating. Because you see, of all the generation of beans, green beans and baked beans and all kinds of things, all kinds of pulses which are there, the human being is the most awkward. Because we can experience an irritation with somebody based on our evaluation of ourselves. And yet in psychology we have something which is, called, we're making a superimposition. We're actually imposing on another person the quality we dislike in ourselves. Projection, we call it. So if somebody is an angry person, And we get angry with the angry person, probably because we ourselves are angry. If we are inefficient and we get irritated with somebody else's inefficiency, it's probably because we ourselves are inefficient. And so this conflict between people primarily, we think requires a conflict resolution without going deeper. And to go deeper, we require an element of humility. We have to say, yes, I am at fault or something like that. There was one speaker at the conference yesterday. I should tell you, this conference was a conference on peace organized by the Rotary Club. And I was invited as part of their panel there. But there was one speaker who was talking about the peace process in Northern Ireland. And he was very involved in the peace process, along with the Taoiseach, or the Prime Minister of the day, and all the major people. But he said there was one person that he was talking about who said, I am abjectly, I'm just trying to read the words that I noted down. He said, I'm full of abject and true remorse. And the speaker who was involved in this, the peacemaker, involved in peace talks, said, that person I understood was committed to peace. Anybody else who doesn't have that kind of attitude is not truly committed to peace. So we have to have that humility to say, okay, there is a pain within us which we see in the other person. We recognize it. We don't bypass it. There was a lot of talk yesterday at the conference about justice. And I had mentioned, justice is an unemotional term. It's a clinical term. And yet, you see, when we are wounded and feel things are unjust, that becomes emotional. So that the impersonal becomes personal now. And so behind that has to be love. From love will come all the other values. It's not enough to have justice as a lone kind of arbitrator. There has to be some reason behind it that pushes it forward, that is namely love. And love encompasses compassion. Love encompasses empathy. That encompasses listening to somebody, not necessarily agreeing, but communication to the extent that I want to understand what the other person is emotionally feeling on the other side. Only then can I really relate to the person. So there's physical suffering going on. And behind that, as it were, more subtle than that, will be emotional disturbances, will be a pain, a painfulness in the psyche. And if you say, yeah, but, I'm not feeling that, the chances are we are feeling it maybe in a different way, or the chances are that we have felt it. If you do a survey, one of the most, particularly during the COVID times, the most severe malady was loneliness. People felt lonely. And what loneliness means is can lead to a sense of isolation, a sense of depression, a sense of introspection, a sense of poor me, and all of those kinds of things. And so there are people during that period of time who felt the same. And a person describing this aspect of loneliness would understand that. Bereavement. It's easy to say, as the Americans do, somehow it's a kind of phrase, we are sorry for your loss. It's just a phrase that is trotted out. But the silence, and maybe a hug, or maybe just looking into the face of the bereaved in a way that allows a person to understand, yes, you understand, because you also have suffered this. There's a huge world of difference. And so mobilizing compassion, But at the end of it, there is something that activates, by its presence, activates the mind, activates the intellect, and the deciding faculty, that is, and activates the physical. So that what we call death is the absence of the physical only, but the rest is all intact. That's what we call the soul, or jiva. So I was mightily impressed by that. But the speaker used somebody called Senator George Mitchell, who was describing what a peace process looks like. And he starts off by, now he went into it in great detail, but I'm just giving you headings. So reframing the situation so that when we are caught in a difficult situation, possibly, we have to reframe it, shift our understanding, and look at it from a different direction. Look at it from a much more positive direction, I heard somebody who was struggling with English, was curious about English phrases. And he happened to mention, you see, supposing a person is half dying, medically speaking, a person who has a severe flu, for example, and can hardly get out of bed and phones into the work and says, I'm sorry, I'm not feeling 100%. Well, the person, if you were to raise it in language or percentage, you would say 1.5% probably, 100% is all the percentages, So we have this way of expressing ourselves, and it's understood on the other side, but doesn't really reflect how we're feeling. So reframing something in our language and reframing our thoughts is only the start of dealing with an issue or a difficulty. And then he puts there, as part of the Northern Ireland negotiation process or peace process, negotiating. That is, we have to find a win-win situation where everybody wins. And that means often we have to compromise. And then he puts this, what he describes as the dance floor, that is publicly working together, showing these values that we're espousing and so on, a camaraderie kind of thing, walking together publicly. And then developing personal relationships. Now he's talking in the context of the Northern Ireland peace process. And the remarkable thing about that is former enemies were walking together as friends because they realized that they were humans. They realized their similarities, not just their differences. And then mercy was mentioned in terms of compassion, having compassion for the other person. And then putting the big picture, how can we benefit the most for the greater good, Sometimes the small picture inhibits our understanding of the big picture, the general picture, all the other implications. And then poetic truth was one thing that he mentioned. That is a change due to the oneness underneath. That's exactly it. When we see that there's an ocean underneath and a seeming individual, we get a wealth of understanding and a sense of unity and oneness, which is absolutely necessary. And then giveness is another thing he described. That is, goodness is here and now. And as he was relaying all these things as part of negotiating technique or creating peace, I thought this is applicable to everybody. And I put it in a different way. So I reframed it and produced it in the talk I gave. So shifting our outlook, a resolution to change ourselves and to change the situation. We have the capacity to transform all the negative things, so-called, into something entirely beautiful, positive. And then in any circumstance, because the circumstance we find ourselves in is how we find ourselves. There's no good complaining about it. The circumstances, our resources, our environment, our situation, that's where we find ourselves. Can we do something to change it? There was a lady who founded an organization, and I only found out about it yesterday, called Easy Trees. And she has a mission: I'm going to plant 1 million trees in the whole of Ireland. And each tree is going to be planted by a child. So far, her organization has managed to plant 700 of the 1 million trees. And what a beautiful project, you know. And it gives free cuttings to anybody who wants to. And these are indigenous to Ireland trees. So this wonderful project required a resolution, a vision, and required and as long as you have that, all the resources come together and meet you. After all, we can call it the law of the universe is a resource supplier. As long as we don't use that being as a resource supplier, we don't have to ask. It's automatically provided for us. We don't have to pray every moment, Lord, give me the next breath. The next breath is there. It's with us before we know it, and the next breath is ready. And so the valuing things in a moral way for the benefit of all beings, examples of principles. We have to be living examples of the principles. And we have to be friendly to all. There's no excuse for it. Patanjali in his Yoga Sutras puts that very clearly. If you want concentration, then be friendly to all. Be happy and joyful for those who are successful. Be compassionate for those who are not and are suffering. And be non-judgmental for those engaged, whether it's virtue or vice. And these simple lessons from Patanjali, put in simple sutras, in simple sutra language, a word here, a word there, they're very profound. Why shouldn't we be friendly to all, regardless? And then this question of compassion, and then generosity of spirit, and then seeing this ocean, this substance behind everything. And that's where things like conflict resolution get resolved. And then finally, seeing the good in everything is how it was put. And I put my oaths: observe, appreciate, and thankfulness. Count your blessings every day. And the word hope was bandied around a lot. I told them, the word hope can be used in two ways. The one way is being full of hope and optimism. That's one way. The other way it's being used is I'm hoping for a better future. In other words, it's not here. It's a very negative phrase. And the way we have to deal with life is fill the mind, make it bright with this optimism, with this hope, in that sense. So these were some points about this conference. And there were some very, very wonderful speakers, excluding me. I'm not a wonderful speaker, but others were there. And really the foundation of every situation, every decision, the foundation for discernment will be the 4 key principles that Vedanta puts out. Firstly, the real conviction of the divinity of the soul. And that creates respect. It creates democracy. It values the individual. It gives us a sense of an aspiration for freedom and gives us the experience of freedom. Because this inner soul is already free. We don't have to look for it, but we can see it being expressed. And then there's the unity of existence. That is that whatever we do to one person, we're actually doing to all. The Purusha Suktam that I mentioned probably at a previous talk will outline this cosmic person. And if we really knew it, we would never do any harm to another creature, another wave in the grand ocean of existence, because it is damaging ourselves or positively affecting ourselves, depending. Everything that we do is impacting the whole. Let us call it, say, the butterfly effect, that a movement somewhere will affect everything simply because there's a unity of existence. And from there, we can get all our ethics, all our sense of justice, and so on, like that. And then there's the oneness of the Godhead, this Brahman. The Atman is one with this, but there's only this one thing. Ekam sat vibra bahuda vadanti, says the Rig Veda. Truth is one. Sages, wise people see this variously, and therefore we have this whole understanding of the harmony of religions. And when we talk about peace, well, peace has been disrupted by religions and religious institutions. Peace can be disrupted at various interpersonal encounters, annual general meetings, and all kinds of things can disrupt the whole thing. That's okay. That's the human nature. We have to look at things very differently. We have to see this harmony everywhere. And we respond on the spiritual level, not on the human level. The human level has a response of its own. Let it come, let it go. But let us not draw the line there. We have to go much deeper. So this individualism is catered for. Violence is avoided totally, whether it's by word or by sword. Dividedness goes when we apply these things. And religious exclusivism also goes. This is our wonderful contribution in the Vedanta that says, and particularly the Vedanta as taught by Sri Ramakrishna, who experienced this harmony of religions firsthand by direct experience, broadening the scope beyond all the various approaches within Hinduism and embracing Islam and Christianity as well. So several questions were posed at the conference. Since the conference is fresh in my mind, I'm going to mention it. And it started off with a question because in 2009 and we revoked in 2015, there was a Hindu declaration on climate change, a big document, significant document. But it was based on the premise, Mata Bhumi Putro Aham Pradivyaha. That is, the earth is my mother, and I am her child. A simple statement, and yet if we really took it truthfully, it would have several implications. Firstly, we would not damage in any way the earth and all the things on the earth, such as rivers, streams, and air, and what have you. And these are easy things to say, but those who are saying them are doing something counter to it. Thinking that, where else will I pump toxic fumes? Where else will I put factory waste? Not thinking at all of the overall benefit. Bad decisions are being made in that way. And so, how did that relate to peace? I had to say, the globalization view of things. That's, if we were to tackle that, if we were to view that in a global way, then perhaps things would change, not just in terms of climate, but also in terms of global peace. And of course, the issue of peace has come up as promoting the whole conference on it, based really on the idea that we are currently in a war situation more dangerous than any other era since there's the availability of nuclear weapons. Now, we have always had conflict in the past. There has always been violence in the past. There will always be violence in the past, as far as I can make out. And today is Ramnam, so naturally, when we read the story of Rama, we are seeing tragedies and joyful moments and increasing conflicts until ultimately we can't avoid a conflict situation. But the conflict situation is really in a defense situation. It is for the greater good. And so you can't say, let's have peace. Let's all, hug each other and have peace, because there are some situations where we have to defend ourselves. I mentioned this quite casually to some of the participants of the conference yesterday over tea. And I suppose I was inspired by tea, but I said, you see, this ideal of peace in the world is an ideal that is unreachable, and it is really an idealistic aspiration which is extremely good, extremely wonderful. But I'm sorry, it's never happened in the past. I can't see it happen in the future, as long as there is selfishness, as long as this bhoga is there, as long as this aishwarya is there, as long as desire is there and a will for power, stemming from a sense of individualism. And that individualism is caused by lack of discernment, discrimination. It is this lack of discrimination that produces a misinterpretation of the world, a misunderstanding about our fellow beings, and a whole mistaken view of our existence. And you may ask, why is it there? And nobody can answer. I can't answer. No sages could answer. Swami Vivekananda says, at least we're honest to say we don't know. But the fact is it's there. And the fact is that when we realize the truth, all of the difficulties are gone. All of this Maya, as we call it, is gone. The magic show is over. We no longer have to be clowns tumbling, in Vivekananda's vivid language. So how do we get out of this painful situation? It is only through discernment. It is only by understanding the ephemeral nature of what is in front of us. And there are several ways, graphic ways of doing it. For example, trying to understand, how long will I live? Now, however long that is, everything around you is gone when the life is gone. Your house is gone, your neighbors are gone, your disputes are gone, your loves are gone, your bank account is gone, everything is gone. So that's a kind of wake-up call to examine that, not to brush it under the psychological carpet and say, it will never happen to me. It will happen. But that's not the important thing. The important thing is, this is an inevitable thing. It's not the end, I know that. However, in this adventure, on this stage at the moment, how can I make the best use of it? That's the important question. So, how we make the best use of it from moment to moment, every second being a blank check. And this blank check, how will we use it? How will we fill it in? The last moment is important, but every second is the last moment. And so there was this declaration on climate change which took place, and that led us to a discussion on peace. And then the question of food systems, or the suggestion of food systems, was brought up. Now, I mentioned that there was a man called Nitin who visited us here, and I took him across to the school opposite us, and he gave a very beautiful talk. He was part of the Gandhi peace movement. He's going around the whole world walking, step by step, one foot in front of the other, and pushing a wheelbarrow in front with this big sign, and that carries his tent and his equipment and what have you, and pamphlets about world peace. And currently he's in America. The remarkable thing is, he's not carrying any food provisions. If it comes to it, he has a tent, which may not be pleasant in certain weather, but he seldom has to use the tent because wherever he goes, people invite him into their homes, give him food, give him shelter, and he makes friends with them. This is a living example of disseminating world peace on a personal level because people are sharing a meal. And he's experiencing many different types of meals, no doubt, and getting a cultural experience, a varied cultural experience from it. But the main thing is, if you want to break down barriers, share a meal with somebody, where conversation flows and communication and understanding is also present. So I mentioned that. And then there was the hope of pluralism was brought up. And so that was where I managed to say all these points that were mentioned in terms of the Northern Ireland peace process. And there was another movement, which was planting what is called a peace pole everywhere. There's something like 250,000 globally planted, with the words peace on and so on in significant places. And the person said, how we disseminate this when we put these peace poles in various schools, the benefits of that, and she listed some 7 benefits. And I thought, that's the key to communication. First of all, learning. How do we learn? Listen to others, to understand others. That makes sense. Now, we're very bad at listening. And the evidence of poor listening will be if somebody is talking and I'm formulating a reply. It means I'm not listening. I'm only listening to myself. And I can't wait for the person to finish so I can put something of my own in. Or to interrupt them halfway. I often give the exaggerated example, completing somebody's sentences. You see, I went to the airport. Oh, yesterday? No. 2 hours ago. And there I met your friend? No. I met a colleague. And and you were discussing the flight? No, we were discussing his family. And so it goes on. See, and then interjecting in a person's way of speaking with or that happens. There are many ways that we don't really properly listen, and listening requires empathy. Let me put myself in the other person's shoes and feel what they are feeling to understand what they are trying to communicate. And it involves observation, observing the body language is taking place, the tone of voice. For example, a politician who says, in my humble opinion, well, there's nothing humble about a politician's opinion, in my experience anyway, and so on. How are you? I'm fine. Clearly you're not in that tone of voice. So it goes on. And then the other thing is discourse, real communication, one-to-one communication. And developing and growing as a result of this. And then reflection on it, reflection and concentration, bringing into our mindfulness and our meditation. And promotion of the goal is the effect, and creativity is the effect. And this lady brought this out in the context of this as benefits, but I registered them as the whole resolution to interpersonal relationships. Not ending there, but in our view, going much deeper to this divine, which is there underneath, the vast ocean of sublime bliss, which we miss if we only deal with the surface. And so this, when our reaction comes up, we have to take it as a wave that arrives in our mental field. And we can observe it. It comes, it goes. Come if you like, stay if you can, go if you must. And then as part of our discernment, we then put in something of our own. We revalue the situation and go to a deeper level and make that repeatedly the habit level so that that becomes our first reaction. Suppression we don't do. Repression we don't do. acceptance we do, but recognize your first reaction probably comes from when you were 3, 4, 5, whatever it was, and you have to evaluate whether that's an appropriate reaction. In transpersonal psychology, that is used where this PAC is brought out, parent, adult, child. It is only from the adult point of view that we're able to sort out what we should take from our background, from our habit level there, and what we should take from our emotional habit level, and make it a mature response. Learn to do that. That's called the art of the game of life, how to play it. Take it as a sport, take it as a game, enjoy the process. As I say often, maybe at the end of the day, your prayer will be a complaint. Lord, I'm sorry, I didn't get enough challenging curveballs today. Please send me some better ones tomorrow. Most people won't take that view. They'll say, oh, please, make things easy and simple for me. But that would be a wrong evaluation of life. It would be a lack of faith, basically, to say all resources are supplied well. Like in playing a game of tennis, you won't complain. Somebody's hitting me with balls on the other side of a net. Please stop it. No, learn how to return it nicely. So that would be some points on that. Now, of course, today being Ramnam, we will, of course, explore if we want the deeper aspect of it, then we have to go to the Adhyatma Ramayana and see the philosophy behind the story of Rama. But if you study the story, you'll understand it's not a simple, easy, convenient game. It's full of ups, it's full of downs. It's life, basically. But how do we learn how to deal with it from this? Rama's arrows, basically, we can interpret them as arrows of concentration. Defeating what? Defeating doubt and fear and lust and greed, desire, and all of those kinds of things head on. In other words, in summary, selfishness. And once we are unselfish more and more and more, then resources come to us, which we can now share. And light gets beamed in two ways. You can either beam it on yourself, poor me, what a pity, or you can beam it like a great lighthouse everywhere for the benefit of all. That would be the point. Now, Valmiki's Ramayana, the last section, is controversial, the Uttarakanda, because many people want a kind of Ramayana, like Tulsidas and others, tremendous works they do, beautiful poems, but they want things to end happily ever after. Life doesn't do it. So why should we expect it? We have all the resources to transform all our difficulties into something positive. And all the example I always give is the rose flower, you see. Where is its roots? In compost. It knows how to take all the crud of life and transform it into something full of beauty and life. Generous enough to spread its aroma everywhere, and enough to make a landing strip for insects to come and spread its pollen, and orientate its head toward the sun. And the knowledge of how to take the sun's energy and transform it in a photoelectric way into a living thing. You and I don't have this knowledge. But isn't it a wonderful thing? So we can learn the lesson. We take all this and transform it. And I often give that example at the risk of telling the story over and over again of the farmer and the neighbor. And the farmer has to pass through the neighbor's field in order to get water in a bucket and carry it back. And the neighbor has this curious sense of humor. He wants to play a practical joke and decides every day I will throw cow dung over this person in an ambushed way. He won't know where it's coming from day to day. I'll do this, I'll do this, I'll do this. After 1 year of this, As you know, the farmer comes to the neighbor, knocks on the door, and the neighbor is thinking this man is going to probably box my ears or whatever. But the farmer produces the most exquisite rose flower. You see, all that cow dung you gave me, I've managed to plant these roses. I'm exporting them and so on now, but I'm giving to you this rose flower on one condition, please. What is that? In this coming year, please, can you double the quota? So with all of this seeming misfortune in life, we have, this is our resource to transform us. What is your job? Professional transformer. And that requires this shift in our understanding and shift in our reactions. Very progressively cultivated with great patience and perseverance, like planting the rose flowers themselves. So I hope I answered your question in some way. All right, well, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you.